I love producing and recording music, but the biggest problem that I've always had with it is friction. Ideas come fast, especially when you're in flow, but for me, the second recording them starts to feel like a process, it gets easier to lose momentum and sometimes even the whole idea. One of the principles that I tend to live by is the concept of low friction. The less friction there is between where you are and the thing you're trying to do, the more likely you are to actually do the thing, and I carry that mindset everywhere, but especially here in the studio. I think this principle is easier to apply inside of your DAW because software is relatively easy to pull up or swap out, but things get trickier when audio recording is involved. Now you have to pick a mic, connect it, route it to your DAW, gain stage it, and while none of that takes very long, for me, that is already too much friction. I don't want to fumble with setting up. I just want to hit record and get going. A few years ago, I was introduced to the concept of the always on mic, and since then I've applied this to 3 different scenarios here in my studio so I never lose ideas. The concept is simple. Choose a mic and keep it connected and routed at all times so that if an idea strikes, it's already set up to capture at any moment. Now, before I show you exactly how I have all of this set up, I do want to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to pick up Studio Pro or any other piece of gear, this is my go-to spot, so I'll make sure to link everything for you down below. Okay, so the first thing I want to clarify is that this setup is not for a final vocal recording. That usually does require taking more time to carefully select the right mic for the singer and then adjusting the settings to them. This is more so for capturing quick ideas during the writing process, which you can then properly record later. I do have a setup here for recording acoustic guitar that can be used as a final recording setup, but we'll get to that in a bit. So here in my studio, as mentioned, I have 3 setups that help me move quickly. Starting here at my desk, you probably noticed, but I have this little dynamic mic clamped onto it. I do use this to record my YouTube audio sometimes, but I also use it as a scratch mic, which becomes super useful whenever I am writing and creating alone. I know a lot of people like to keep a condenser mic off to the side, but I work out of a smallish room that also doubles as a YouTube studio, so I have to be really selective with how I set things up so I don't end up with too much floor clutter. This specific mic here is the PreSonus PD70 on an OC White Ultima arm. One important thing to note here is that dynamic mics like this one often need more gain to work properly. I know a lot of people like to use the cloud lifters, but that adds another box and more cabling, which for me goes against the whole point of keeping things clean and simple. What I choose to do instead is use this little preamp specifically for dynamic mics called the Triton Fethead. This thing is super tiny, plugs directly into the back of the mic, and only requires 1 cable, so that's a win. Again, this setup is for me whenever I am at my desk, but I've also recently added a second scratch mic setup for when I am writing with artists. For that second setup, I have another dynamic mic, this time a handheld, which was first connected to a really long cable running back to my interface. That allowed me to place the mic on the table here at my studio, so if I had an artist over and we wanted to capture a quick vocal idea, they could do it right from the studio couch. This setup worked, but again, I like to keep my studio floor as clean as possible, so a few months ago, I upgraded it by making it wireless. Instead of a long cable, I now have it connected to this X-Vibe transmitter, which then sends the signal wirelessly over to the receiver connected to my interface. Much cleaner. As for the mic itself, I had a spare Shure SM58, but that is way too expensive for this purpose, so honestly, I'd recommend just getting the cheapest dynamic handheld mic you can find. Finally, the last application of this concept here is with my floor mic, which I have placed directly next to me on my desk, and which I use to record percussion or acoustic guitar. Now, because I often use this mic for final takes, this one is connected with a long cable instead of a wireless system. Okay, so hopefully by now you can see the benefit of having these always on mics for different scenarios, but now let's talk about how I actually set them up both outside and inside of Studio Pro. As far as the connections go, my preference is to have each mic on its own dedicated input on my interface. That just makes everything easier because each mic can stay connected and ready to go at all times. Now, if your interface only has 1 or 2 mic inputs, then obviously that gets a little trickier. In that case, the one thing I would recommend is to use a little desktop XLR patch bay. The way I'd use that is by connecting the outputs of the mics into the inputs of the patch bay, and then running one cable from the patch bay output into one of the inputs of your interface. That way, whenever you want to switch mics, all you have to do is move that one output cable to the mic you want to use, and you're set. If you have a 2-input interface and use one input for this setup, then that also leaves your second input open for whatever else you need. Moving over to Studio Pro, we're gonna head on over to our preferences, and then under the audio setup section, the first thing you wanna do is make sure that you have your interface selected. Then head over to the bottom here and click on Session Setup or Song Setup, depending on the version that you are on. This will land you on the Inputs and Outputs matrix, which is where we're going to create virtual inputs for every microphone you used, and then match them to a physical input on your audio interface. I already have mine here set up, but let's recreate this with the Artist Scratch mic. So for that, I would go ahead and click on Add Mono. Let's go ahead and label this Artist Scratch. And then all we simply have to do is find the physical input on my interface where I want to connect this to. For me, I have an Apollo Twin here on my desk that I have the receiver connected to. And so this automatically linked it to it. It doesn't always happen this way. I just got lucky, but this is where I want it to be. Now, if you have dedicated inputs for every single microphone, then go ahead and just repeat this process for every single one of them. If you're gonna be using the patch bay method, then you only need to set up one because you'll be doing the physical switching on the patch bay as we discussed earlier. In any case, once you're done here, go ahead and make sure to hit apply so all your changes get saved. Quick little pro tip here, if you want this exact input-output matrix routing setup to come up every single time you open up a new Studio Pro session, then what you also want to do is make sure to hit the Make Default button here at the bottom, and then hit yes. Now, if you want to take this a step further, you could also create dedicated audio tracks that you can then link to these inputs so that everything is ready to go. So let me show you that really quickly. Once you're back on the timeline, hit the T key to create a new audio track. And yeah, we can call this Scratch Vocals, and then count 1, that's fine. Format mono, yes. And then for the input, we want to make sure that we select whatever mic we want to use. So let's say that I wanted to use this one, the PD70. I would click on that and then okay. And so now if I go ahead and record arm this track, you should be able to see those levels jumping up and down, indicating that we have signal coming in. And just to bring this home, let's say, for example, that I actually did want to have the Artist Scratch. Let's switch over to that. Let me go ahead and grab it here. Let's go ahead and turn it on because I usually have it off until I need it. And so now once I have that routed in, you can see that I also have those levels from this microphone being sent over to Studio Pro. Now finally, if you only want to set all of this up once, then what I would also recommend is that you make this into a template. That way, the next time you open up Studio Pro, you're gonna have the routing and the track set up. And to do that, it's super simple. You just simply go over to the top here, File, Save as Template, call it whatever you want. You can go ahead and place it wherever you want if you click on these 3 little dots, and then just hit OK. So with all of this set up, let me show you how I would actually use this in a real world scenario. Okay, so this is a beat that I was working on a few days ago, and let's say that I just suddenly came up with a vocal melody idea. Here in my template, I actually have a Scratch vocal track all set up and ready to go. So let's make sure, double check that we have the right mic. We do. Let's go ahead and record, enable it. Hit record, and let's see what we can come up with. So this is me recording straight into Studio Pro. I made a beat, I got a vocal idea. This is obviously me talking, but you get the point. I can simply record and make sure that I don't lose it. And so now let's flip it. Let's say, for example, that instead I was working with an artist here in the studio. They're in the couch here in the back, and I wanted to use this mic. For that, I would simply just swap it over to my Artist Scratch, and we're good to go. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Again, this is me wirelessly on a microphone. I can stand up, I can do whatever. If I go out of camera, you're not gonna be able to see me, but you get the point. I can simply hit stop. And of course, this works exactly the same for my floor mic. For that case, let's say, for example, that I was recording some sort of acoustic guitar, then I would go down here to my acoustic guitar track and then make sure that it's on the floor microphone, and I am ready to go. Now, depending on your setup and your needs, you might not need all of these mics set up at one time. Maybe you just need one. But at the end of the day, the point of this is to reduce friction and get you moving quicker. For me, the biggest shift here is that I don't really think about recording anymore. If I have an idea, I just hit record and I get down to it. There's no setup, No second guessing, no moment where I lose the idea because I have to set things up first. And that's honestly really the goal, because the easier it is to capture something, the more likely you are to actually do it, and over time, that leads to more music getting finished. But I'm curious, is this something you've ever thought about adding to your setup, or are you already doing something like this? Let me know down below. And if you want me to go deeper into how I structure my sessions inside of Studio Pro, or dive deeper into my template, then I can definitely do that too. Thank you once again to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video, and thank you for hanging out, but I will see you on the next one.